How's it going, everybody? Eric here from That's Wrestling. Thanks for tuning in today. Today I will be going over AEW Dynamite from December 4th, 2019. And wow, this was an interesting show to say the least. For the most part, I really liked this show, but there was a couple really down spots, and we'll get into those when I get there. But if you'd like to get a hold of me, you can send me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can also pick this up as a podcast from all your favorite podcast directories, or head over to thatswrestling.com to pick up the RSS feed address over there. If you are listening to this as a podcast, I do this live on Thursday evening at about 8 o'clock Eastern, starting a little late today, but I do this live on YouTube at 8 o'clock Eastern on Thursday, so you can head over to YouTube, search for That's Wrestling, and you will find the channel. Also, the link to the channel is also in the show notes as well. So let's get to it, and this was a good episode. Let me just start off quickly just recapping what happened on AEW Dark. There's Jimmy Havoc versus Brandon Cuttler. It's pretty much as you expect. Jimmy Havoc pretty much took the match. After the match, he ended up stapling a check to Cutler's head because he was going to get fined $10,000 for every time he stapled somebody. So he decided, well, I might as well just staple the $10,000 check for my fine right to Brandon Cutler's head. There was a little promo backstage about that, a little video backstage about that. Then there was Shawn Spears versus Sonny Kiss. Again, as you would expect, Shawn Spears pretty much dominated the match, and then after the match, he gave, with the assistance of Tully, a spike pile driver to Sonny Kiss on the floor like they had been doing. And then there was Marko, Stunt, and Jungle Boy versus Santana and Ortiz. This was actually a really, really fun match. A lot of fun spots, throwing around Marko because he can be. After the and Santana and Ortiz picked up the win over them by pinning Marko after like a ton of different moves, like one after the other. They kept beating on them after the match was over. Luchasauras comes out to make the save, and then Jake Hager comes down as well, and they have a little bit of a scuffle, and then Sammy Guevara came down as well. So basically everyone from the inner circle except Jericho came down, and then they beat up Luchasauras and the rest of the Jungle Express, or Jurassic Express. So that's where it stands. So that kind of plays a little bit into what happens on Dynamite. So going into Dynamite for this week, the show starts off right away with a match. No video package, no nothing, just the theme, and then pyro, and then Young Bucks and Dustin Rhodes versus Santana and Ortiz and Sammy Guevara. So it was a six-man tag. This match was awesome. Dustin came out wearing gear to match the Bucks, so he had tassels on his his ankles like the Bucks do. Sammy and Dustin started off. Pretty much a breakdown happens right at the beginning, all-out brawl. Bucks hit super kicks on Santana and Ortiz. And then Bucks and Dustin hit a triple super kick party on Sammy. And then Matt Jackson does a crossbody over the post to the floor. Dustin does a cannonball dive off of the apron to the floor as Nick did a corkscrew dive over him to the floor to Santana and Ortiz, I believe it was. Matt does a 3 Northern Lights suplex to Sammy, then adds in Santana as well for a fourth one. He tries for a fifth, adding in Ortiz, but he can't do it. The Inner Circle triple teams Matt for a bit. Ortiz goes for a delay vertical suplex. Sammy tags in to pass him off, but Matt escapes because Sammy can't hold him up. Dustin gets a tag, hits a power slam on Ortiz and then Santana, and then he waves off Sammy like, whoa, hold up. He catches his breath for a second, and then he gives Sammy a power slam. This is a really funny spot that Dustin has been doing on AEW Dark because, he's old, so he gets out of breath. But it's really funny. Dustin sets Santana up for the Shattered Dreams. I guess they're calling it the Unnatural Kick now. The ref stops it. Ortiz hits Dustin with the slapjack behind the ref's back, and then Sammy hits a 630 off the top rope. 1, 2, Dustin kicks out. Sammy gets a hot tag. Nick gets a hot tag and destroys Sammy. Matt gets tagged in, does a ton of dives happen all over the place, like it's complete chaos at this point. Eventually the Inner Circle had a triple team move on Matt. Dustin breaks up the pin. And then Sammy goes to live vlog a shooting star press. Bucks hit him with a super kick party out of midair. And then Dustin hits... So they set Sammy up for the unnatural kick, and the Bucks give him super kick party while Dustin gives him the unnatural kick. Then the match finished with Dustin and Matt had Santana and Ortiz up in the pile, the tombstone position, and then Nick goes off to the top rope. He basically does he drop kicks both of Santana and Ortiz, and then so it's basically a double indie taker, and then he falls backwards on top of Sammy and picks up the 3. So basically it was a double indie taker coffin drop type of thing. He lands back first onto Sammy and picks up the 3 count there. This was a really fun match. I mean, this is how you start off a show. It was about 12 to 15 minutes, somewhere around there. And the match just the show just started off with this match. So you want to start a show hot. This is how you start a show hot. Afterwards, the commentators run down the rest of the card. I mean, it was a pretty awesome card. There's Chuckie T versus Rey Fenix. We also had Jericho was going to speak. There was Shida versus Kris Statlander, and then Daniels versus Pentagon Jr. and Joey Janela versus Jon Moxley. We had, after the opening match, we had Trent with Chuckie T and Orange Cassidy came out versus Rey Fenix. A nice back and forth to start it off. Fenix was really working heel over this. There was, he would gesture to the crowd that he would do something and he'd do something else. He kind of hinted at doing like one of his flashy moves, and then he bounced on the rope, went down back to the canvas and just punched him and just punched Trent. So he's really kind of starting to work heel at this point. Trent turns it around, hitting Fenix with a drop kick out of the air when Fenix went for a splash, but then Fenix again turns it back around. When Trent goes for a Rana, Fenix ends up turning it into a powerbomb. Fenix does his tightrope run kick to the head of Trent, and then Trent hits a huge lariat and kind of brings stuff to a halt right there. They get into a exchange of chops out on the apron, and while Trent is kind of bent over for a second, Fenix goes up to the top, hits a double stomp to the back of Trent's neck, sending him face planting right into the ring apron. Trent gets the knees up for a splash, then hits the Chuckie knee pile driver, but he cannot pick up the 3 count. Fenix then hits a rolling cutter, a spinning back kick, and then hits the Mexican muscle buster and picks up the 3. Again, this is a really fun match. Trent looks great. Fenix is amazing like always. Trent offers a handshake to Fenix, but he pushes him away, and they start to fight because, I don't know, Trent maybe feels disrespected or something along those lines. Chuckie T has to pull Trent off of Fenix, and that ends that. So Fenix is definitely going heel and making more of an effort to communicate that to the audience that he is no longer the babyface, that everybody seems to cheer him. I'm not sure how well it's going to work because he is so flashy in general. He's always going to get those pops. But I think he can. I think he'll be able to turn it around. I mean, they've been working heel pretty much since AEW started, but they haven't been doing it as effective as you would hope. But I think now they are definitely trying to make more of an effort to do that and really communicate that across, that they are kind of the bad guys at this point. Cody has a promo. This was a really awesome promo. In short, he was talking about the scar over his head, over his eye, which is now going to be a very permanent scar, is a reminder of failure to get the championship that he can't challenge for again. Last week, he felt like he failed again by getting his ass kicked by another unknown entity, that being Blade and Butcher. So I guess he's calling MJF roundabout that he's also an unknown entity. And he said when he reached out his hand to those who are usually there to help pick him up, he finds that they're all preoccupied. His brother is in a blood feud with the Young Bucks against Santana and Ortiz, though it's actually Jake. It's really more Dustin against the Inner Circle than that particular, but the Young Bucks are also in a feud with the Inner Circle as well. His wife is running around cutting the hair off of the women's division, and his best friend kicked him square in the balls. He says Butcher, Blade, Bunny, and then he calls them by other names: Andy Williams, Pepper Parks, and Allie, whatever pseudonyms they want to go by. He's familiar with their work. If they ever wanted a match, they could have just asked him. But he understands the pomp and circumstance. Just look at his own entrance. One thing, so coming up in a second, says anytime, any place, he'll have the match right now if they want. They can even choose his partner. He says that about MJF, that MJF says he won't wrestle him, and he doesn't want to work in absolutes. Now, just how he kind of started delivering at this point, I wasn't sure if this was actually going to head heel, because, you know, we have the stipulation of that he won't challenge for the title again, but it's obviously going to be a heel turn at some point where he is going to go back on that stipulation, because it's not like it was a formal stipulation or anything, but it's already sounded like he was going a bit dark, and then he turned it around. I think it might have just been his delivery of a couple lines or the usage of a couple lines. I'm not sure if it was intentional to go that way, to just kind of give it a little bit of flavor, or if it was just kind of an oversight on the delivery and the choice of words that he did. Anyways, he was talking about MJF, saying that he threw in the towel, but it was not his decision to make. Says that he handpicked MJF, and people said he was too short, that he was hood rich, and that his scarf was fake, or that he does the worst crossroads in wrestling, and says, well, at least they're botching it on 2 channels now, and that under these lights he's nothing but a Bush League NWO version of Chris Jericho. Cody looked... But he says, I looked all past that. He says that he wasn't naive. He says that he was naive that he could make MJF his protege, but he was not naive that MJF was a bad guy. He knew he was a bad guy, but he was my bad guy, is what he says. And then, so he wants to sweeten the deal. You say you won't wrestle me. Well, what's it going to take, he says. And then he offers up his truck, his expensive watch that... Tony Khan gave him, his Louis Vuitton shoes. He even offers over $50,000 that Justin Roberts brings up in a briefcase, and he takes out a $100 bill, and he says to give it to that kid in the front row. The kid totally no-sells it that he just got a $100 bill. It was pretty funny. He was dressed up, and I think it was Clementine Cassidy. I'm not totally sure. I think it was the same kid, but he was dressed up in like a button-up shirt and a tie, so I'm not sure what he was doing there. But anyways, he says he still thinks that MJF is the future, and that he says an education is a passport to getting there, and that he's going to educate him, and everyone's waiting, so let's do this. So that was, Cody gives this really fiery promo, and he wants MJF to fight him, offering up all this stuff. So we will see how it goes. Next up, there's just a really short Joey Janela promo. He talks about why he's willing to take this match. He says, well, he doesn't have a place to sleep tonight, so a hospital bed sounds nice. And then he says, well, this time it counts because they did have an unsanctioned match previously, and that this time he will have to kill him. And then Jon Moxley steps in. He looks at the camera. He kind of like face palms and wipes his face, and then just says, kids, and then turns and walks away. it was just a completely dry humor remark, and he leaves. So next up, there was a Dark Order promo. It was another video package, just like the past couple weeks. There's a dude who's looking all mad, writing a message on the Dark Order website. And then it cuts to like a ceremony in the woods, and Uno is talking to the guy, and he says, are you sure you're ready to lose it all, to sacrifice it all? What is your motivation for joining the Dark Order? And he says, revenge. And then Uno says, you are one, and gives him a creeper mask. And then they bring out the guy that has been in the past couple weeks, the guy who was on the train, and then the guy who showed up to like the meeting, and they bring him out, and he has a hood on, and they push him to the ground to his knees, and they take the hood off, and Uno says, are you one with the Dark Order? Will you disown your family for the Dark Order? What is your motivation for joining the Dark Order? And he says, I just wanted friends. And Uno sighs, gives some instruction to Grayson, who kicks him down, and the creepers swarm. And I don't know what they're doing, but would they kill this guy or what? Anyways, that was the end of the promo. So now this is getting very interesting on how this is going to go. Next up, we had a video clip of Nyla Rose beating up Shayna. Or Shanna at a signing, so she wasn't able to compete this week, but we had Leva Bates versus Nyla Rose. It was pretty much a squash match. Peter Avalon got involved, but he gets a choke slam for his troubles. Nyla Rose wins right here. After the match, she goes after Leva Bates again. She grabs a table from underneath the ring, puts it in. She goes after Leva Bates. Shanna comes out and drop kicks her off the top rope, gets a few shots in. Nyla then gives Shanna a power slam. Nyla goes outside, gets a table from under the ring. The ref tries to stop her from power bombing Shanna through the table. And Nyla's like, yeah, okay, and like shakes the ref's hand, and then kicks the ref, and then power bombs the ref through the table, and then power bombs Shanna onto the ref. And that was it for that segment. Next up, we had Chris Jericho comes out. He says, no one from Champaign has ever made anything of himself. No one is successful as Chris Jericho. Says that they've sold 12,000 bottles of a little bit of the bubbly in the past week. He says that he's contracted to have one more match this year. He has the option to choose who he wants to face. He put together a little list, and the crowd gets a huge pop. He says, it is not the list. Get out of 2016. This is the Lexicon of Les Champions, and it's a list of every run he refuses to wrestle again in 2019. And he goes, Jon Moxley, Cody Rhodes, Young Bucks, Papa Buck, Uncle Buck, Buck Owens, Moxley, Hangman Page, Diamond Dallas Page, So he's like naming off all these other people, and there are a few funny things in here. Obviously mentioning Paige, because he's not going to wrestle Paige, because one, she can't wrestle anymore, and two, she's in WWE. And then like the 1001 submissions of Jericho or moves of Jericho, something like that from 20 years ago, armbar appears on there multiple times over and over and over. So this is really a callback to a lot of different histories of Chris Jericho. He continues down the list: Scorpio Sky, Too Cold Scorpio, any member of the Scorpions, Moxley, Michael Nakazawa, Kenny Omega, Kenny Ortega, Kenny Shields, which is a singer from a band in Winnipeg or something like that, Kenny Chesney, Kenny from South Park, Moxley, the chubby guy with the popcorn in the 5th row, the ugly guy with the glasses in the 3rd row, Moxley, Darby Allin, Rick Allen, Alan Jones, which is AJ Styles' real name, Moxley, Evil Uno, Angry Dose, Angry Trace, Marty, and then so he stops on Marty. So is this a call that we are going to get the villain, Marty Scurll, in AEW? I would be very interested if that was the case. Or he could have been saying, it could have been Marty or Moxley. Some people are saying they heard Marty. I heard more Mox, but whatever. So it could be a slip. It could be a little teaser in there. It could be just a little Easter egg for people. Then the Jurassic Express music hits, and they all come out. Jericho says that you didn't let me finish. Also on the lexicon is dinosaurs and little children, and Luchasauras grabs a microphone and he growls, and I'm like, oh no, they're not gonna let him talk. And then he starts talking. He says, "Do you think I sound like that? You think I can't talk?" And he says he's got a master's in medieval history. Says dinosaurs have been marginalized for 65 million years, and that Marko may be small for his age, but he's more of a man than Jericho will ever be. Jericho says, first of all, he's small for any age. And then second of all, if it's not Marko, when it's not Luchasaurus, you can't mean Jungle Boy. And says that everyone's pulling for Jungle Boy, but he thinks he's a piece of shit. And Jericho says that Jungle Boy wouldn't last 10 minutes with him. Jungle Boy grabs the mic and just says, I know I can last 10 minutes with you, and I'm going to kick your ass. And he slaps him across the face, and then a brawl breaks out, and Jungle Boy hits a drop kick on Jericho, and Jericho is sent packing at this point. Next up, we have Hikaru Shida and Kris Statlander. So I've seen Kris Statlander on Dark, and she was very impressive. So I was really looking forward to this match because I really like Shida, and I really like what I've seen of Kris Statlander. So before the match, they say that Nyla Rose has been suspended from in-ring competition because of what she did to the ref. So that was just something to get out of the way there. Shida starts off, actually, they have a bit of a back and forth right at the beginning. They move on to the outside. Shida went for the running knee that she uses a chair to like launch herself off of, but Statlander ended up catching her, throws her into the barricade. Statlander maintains control for a bit, just overpowering Shida. Shida turns it around with a missile dropkick off the top rope. She hits a suplex on Statlander, by pulling her from the apron back into the ring over the ropes. Statlander blocks a running knee at one point. They exchange a bunch of kicks. Statlander hits a scissor kick for a 2 count, and then Shida hits a running knee, but Statlander kicks out. Shida hits a high knee, but then Statlander hits a Falcon Arrow for a 2 count. Then Kris Statlander hits the Big Bang Theory, which is basically like a cradle tombstone type of move, and picks up the 3. This was actually a really good match. This is probably probably the best women's match that we've seen so far in AEW. I hope this is signs that they're turning stuff around here. because it has been a little rough in the women's division so far, but this was actually a very good match. So we have Kris Statlander here upsetting the number one contender of Hikaru Shida. So when the power rankings come out, we will probably see a little bit of shuffling going on here. But yeah, I was a really big fan of this match. This was actually probably my favorite match on the card. Even though I didn't write down a ton about it, it just kept me engaged, and I was really happy with what I was seeing and how it went. But then the best part of the show ends up turning into the worst part of the show. Now, this is probably the absolute. This wasn't like a lot of times where it's like it's not the best part of the show. I've said quite a few times it's like, well, this wasn't the best part of the show, but it wasn't bad. And in this case, this was bad. So the lights go out and Brandy and Awesome Kong come out. Brandy just cuts this really robotic and awkward, ridiculous promo, overly scripted. She says that they're the Nightmare Collective, which is a freaking ridiculous name. They're doing jobs that others don't want to do, and who wants to join them? So this is like, it's like a second Dark Order gimmick. You know, she's trying to recruit people to her little cult of whatever. But I mean, this is just bad. It did not work at all. So they're looking at Statlander and Shida, but then you can hear somebody yelling from the front row, yelling, she wants to join, she wants to join. So they bring her over the barricade and up onto the ramp, and they cut off her hair, and that's about it. But again, Brandy has basically become the worst part of the show consistently. I was a little intrigued at the beginning, but now it's just been going south. And I think this is my least favorite gimmick now. They've gotten Dark Order kind of sorted out, and now I'm actually a little intrigued about what they're doing. But this just seems like a bad knockoff. And yeah, just no. I don't want I think they just need to stop with this storyline altogether. Just pull it, because it's just not working. The crowd was completely dead for it. And again, why is Brandy wanting to be a heel when her husband is the biggest babyface on the planet at the moment? It's just completely out of character, and I don't know why she's insisting that she wants to do this, or why they're even letting her do this at this point. It has not been good for a while now, and I would like it to hopefully go away at some point. Next up, we had Christopher Daniels versus Pentagon Jr. So this is the first time that they are meeting since Pentagon Jr. gave Christopher Daniels the pile driver on the ramp. I'm not sure if it's, at least in singles competition, I'm not sure if they've hooked up a little bit in tag. I don't think they have. But anyways, Christopher Daniels versus Pentagon Jr. Daniels attacks right away as Pentagon is coming down the ramp. They fight on the ramp a bit, and they eventually make it into the ring. Pentagon takes control and works over Daniels through the commercial break with kicks and chops. And coming out of the commercial break, JR says, "This is a very competitive match we're having." And I'm like, no, it isn't. Pentagon has been in complete control the entirety of the match. There was very little. Daniels was never like in control of this match. They had a little bit of back and forth at the beginning, but Pentagon had been in very much majority control for like the past like 3 or 4 minutes at that point. So no, it was not a competitive match at all at that point. Daniels turns it around with a face buster, a kick, and then a blue thunder bomb for a 2 count. Pentagon hits this wicked sling blade. Looks so much better than Finn Balor's. I'm sorry, than I like I like Prince Devitt, but that sling blade just does not work. Daniels blocks a destroyer attempt out on the ramp, and then Daniels hits a drop kick on Penta on the ramp. Daniels tries for the Arabian moonsault that he likes to do, where it's kind of the he jumps up onto to the top rope and kind of lands on the back of his legs and flips over. But he just like crashed and burned. Like he couldn't get his legs over the top rope. The commentary did a good job of covering it. It seems like Daniels has not recovered from his injuries, but it just looked like a really bad botch. So it really could have gone either way. Was it a planned spot? Was it a purposeful botch? Or was it an accidental botch? It could go either way. Kudos on the commentary for at least coming up with a good plausible reason for it not working out. But Daniels hadn't been selling anything specifically up to that point, and he didn't really sell a reason for it happening after it, so I'm not sure if it was planned to go down that way. Get into the ring. Daniels manages to hit Angel's wings. Fenix runs down and distracts the ref. Fenix throws Daniels' mic stand into the ring. Daniels hits Fenix to kind of neutralize him for a second, and Penta tries to hit Daniels with the mic stand but misses. Daniels grabs the mic stand and thinks about swinging it, but the ref's standing right there. He throws it down to the ground, and as the ref had his back turned to kick the mic stand out of the ring, Penta hits him with a low blow, hits him with a package pile driver, picks up the win. So it seems Penta is definitely making more of a strides to work in the heel realm as well. So they are definitely trying to solidify Lucha Bros as heels at this point. Next up, we had a very quick Blade, Butcher, and Bunny video. Ali says that last week was their first order of chaos. She is sick of seeing Cody's face everywhere. They're in Cody's house to cause him pain, and they're going to cut off the head of the snake. So it seems that Ali has a bit of issue with management. Kind of a strange turn. I don't think we had seen Ali on Dynamite. She was on Dark a few times, so I don't know if this is just a reboot for her character, or if we're going to get some sort of explanation on why she kind of turned this way. But yeah, I'm curious of how this is going to go, but now this is the third kind of dark, mysterious faction. So we have Dark Order, we have Brandy and Kong, and now we have Triple B. I guess I will call them for now. Are they going to hook up at some point and join forces somewhere? Is Brandy involved with the Dark Order? I doubt Brandy is involved with Ali and Ali's group because they attacked her husband. That would just make for a very odd storyline. I don't know if the Dark Order and Blade, Butcher, and Bunny are some sort of linkage there. I'm not sure if this is going to play out, if any of them are linked, but it's going to be very strange having like these three really dark factions unless they flesh out a little bit more and kind of find something that differentiates all three of these kind of little factions here. So I guess we will find out. I am looking forward to finding out what Butcher, Blade, and Bunny are going to do. I'm intrigued about this one, so I guess we will find out in the near future. Hopefully we'll find something. Well, we're going to see them in action next week against Cody Rhodes and I'm totally spacing who his tag team partner is going to be. Anyways, Cody Rhodes has a tag team partner for next week, and he will be facing Blade and the Butcher. So that, at least we're going to start to see him in action, and we'll see how that goes. Next we had the main event of the evening. We had Joey Janela versus Jon Moxley. Moxley is insanely over. And you can tell that he is just totally into what he's doing. It seems like he's completely engrossed in what he's doing with AEW. So that's great. But the crowd pop was huge. And I love his entrance. I love how they followed him from kind of the concourse down the stairways down to the ring. This was actually a really fun match. The right at the beginning was basic wrestling match, just a bit of back and forth. They start out and then they fight out onto the ramp, and kind of Moxley takes control from there. Moxley maintains control for a bit. Basic wrestling, nothing crazy, nothing really stood out in this match until a little later. We had Joey Janela ended up hitting a DDT out on the ramp. Moxley then hits a suicide dive on Moxley. He's kind of rolled off the ramp onto one of the sides of the ring. And I just hit a coffee cup. I'm sorry about that. Moxley tries to hit the paradigm shift off the top rope, but Janela blocks it, and he does a flip over powerbomb, gets a 2 count, and then they get into a striking exchange back and forth, and then Joey Janela hits a belly to back suplex and throws Moxley into the bottom turnbuckle, and his head hit the bottom turnbuckle. It looked brutal. Moxley rolls out of the ring and sits on the timekeeper's table, and the camera just is sitting on Moxley, and then Moxley looks up and his eyes get like really wide, and then out of nowhere Janela comes into frame and just crashes through Moxley. They crash through the table. They did show a replay of this happening. I'm sure they got the shot, but just how they filmed this particularly, they're just sitting on Moxley, and you just see his eyes just open wide, and Janela comes crashing through. And actually, it seemed like Janela's leg might have actually hit the cameraman as well, because the camera got jostled, and you could hear something hit the microphone on the camera as well, so you could hear that and then Janela goes up to the top rope, and they're fighting on the top rope a little bit, and then Moxley hits a paradigm shift and drives Janela's head into the top turnbuckle, and I thought, oh, it's over there. But nope, he picks him up and then gives him a paradigm shift in the ring and picks up the 3 count. So Jon Moxley has picked up a win over Joey Janela. He is definitely going to, I'm pretty sure he's going to be the number one on the power rankings coming now. He is undefeated in singles competition, and he just has the 1 draw with Pac. So he's definitely going to be at the top. After the match, Chris Jericho's music hits. Similar to last week, Moxley's looking around, and then Jericho comes walking out up on the steps, and he just kind of walks down the steps a little bit, and then the show ends. So basically, it exactly ends just like it did last week, with Moxley up on the stairs looking down at Jericho. Now Jericho is up on the stairs looking down at Moxley. Curious how this is going to go. We only have 2 more live shows for this year. They're not having a show on Christmas Day, so we just have the next 2 weeks, and then it goes into January 1st. If they're going to be doing Jericho and Moxley, I'm guessing it's not going to be until the pay-per-view, but they have not announced a date on that, and they are starting to put tickets on for the end of January, and I think they might have like the first show of February. So I'm guessing, again, somewhere around the middle of February is probably my guess of where they're going to put it, because now everything's been announced as far as, we know when UFC cards are happening, we know when WWE things are happening, and they are not doing a takeover on Saturday night before the Royal Rumble this year. They're doing a War of the Worlds or Worlds Collide or whatever, something like that. Yeah, Worlds Collide, I think, is what they're calling it, before the Royal Rumble. So that's not going to be a normal NXT takeover, but they're going to be doing a takeover on a Sunday night instead of a Saturday night. So they're not going to have to compete with that, because AEW has been doing all theirs on Saturday nights. So I'm guessing sometime mid-February is where it's going to be. One thing I actually forgot to mention, I just remembered as I was scrolling back through my notes here. When Nyla Rose put the ref and Shanna through the table, they cut to a shot of Britt Baker in the crowd, with her concerned look, her hands up on her face, just like she looked at NXT when Adam Cole took the air raid crash off the top of the cage at War Games. So it was a funny little thing right there with Britt Baker looking concerned in the crowd. She was actually wearing the same jacket and everything, same nail polish color. Her hair looked pretty much the same, and she was wearing the same exact jacket. So just a little funny thing to put in there. But all in all, I really like this show. The only down spot was that Brandy Rhodes segment. It was just bad. If that segment was not in this show, I would be giving this a 5 out of 5. I'm going to give this a high 4 out of 5. But if that segment was not in there, I would have liked this show. It would have been a smash hit. There weren't any huge things that really stuck out to me that were annoying. So there has been a lot of reports of sound issues, but I have watched all of the episodes on Fight, and the sound has been fine. So every time I hear on a podcast people complaining about the sound, I'm like, what are they talking about? The sound has always sounded fine to me on Fight. So I don't know if it's a TNT thing. Meltzer reported that people who have been watching in Canada on TSN haven't reported any sound issues either. So it sounds like it might specifically be to TNT. Did I say TNN earlier? Man, that's a long callback. So it might be an issue specific to TNT, and it's not on AEW's end. Not that that's an excuse, but what is going on? If it's TNT that's screwing this up for AEW, that is not good. Because like I said, the Fight TV feed has been perfectly fine, and people who are watching it in Canada on TSN have said that the sound has been fine there as well. So there's really the last thing is, it's got to be something to do with TNT and the feed going to TNT, or how TNT is processing it when it gets to TNT. There's some issue. I don't know how they are splitting off the feeds, because obviously they're putting a direct feed to Fight and TSN separate of TNT. So, and I don't know if the TSN and Fight feed are exactly the same. I'm guessing they might be, and to ITV in the UK. So yeah, I have not heard anything said about the sound as far as people who have been watching on Fight or on ITV or on TSN in Canada. So it sounds it's something specific to TNN. So they need to figure that out, because it's not looking good on AEW. AEW is going to take the blame for it, because everybody's watching AEW and they're like, these audio issues don't happen on other shows. So why does it happen on AEW? And I don't know if it's something to lay at AEW's feet, but TNN is not helping things if that's the case. So hopefully they get that fixed. But like I said, haven't had any problems on Fight. As far as the women's match tonight, definitely the best. Hopefully they're now kind of starting to find, they have quite a lot of green women's wrestlers, but they have some good ones too. And I think bringing on Kris Statlander, even though she is green, she does look really good. She's got a good look. She moves really well. Her strikes look good, which is always a big plus to me for women wrestlers, because a lot of time they just don't lay them in. They don't look very good, but Kris Statlander's looks good. There's a couple other women that I've seen on AEW Dark. Oh, and now we have Shanna, who has been signed, so I'm looking forward to seeing more of her. I've really liked how her strikes look, so hopefully Shanna gets rolled in a little bit more. We see more of her. I'd like to see her against Hikaru Shida and see how that goes, because if they can have a good match, then I think we will start to build a little bit of a better women's division. There's also a wrestler named Danny Jordan. She just got squashed by Nyla Rose a couple weeks ago, but she did get a little offense in, and what I saw of it, I liked. So I was a fan of what I saw. I'd like to see more of her. I haven't seen any of her indie matches or anything like that, so I'll try to check her out. But what I saw, I liked, so she might be another one to look at as another possibility to come into the women's division to help flesh it out a little bit. But again, they're still going to need to get people like Britt Baker up to speed. They need to get them more ring time on independent shows if they're not going to be running some sort of performance center of their own, some sort of training center where they can go and get work in, or just partner up and find, if there are decent wrestling schools around the country, just AEW front the payment to the schools to get more training in for some of these wrestlers if they need it, and get practice in and all that stuff. It's just what you're going to have to do when you have so many green talent, because a lot of the women's wrestlers got scooped up by WWE because they could just sign whoever they want because they have all the money. And even though they're not using, tons of them, they just scooped up everybody on the independent scene. So they're definitely going to have to work to find experienced women's wrestlers who are good. And, the still out there. I hope that they can snag Tessa Blanchard when her Impact contract runs out next summer. Tennille Dashwood is not on an exclusive contract with Impact. I wouldn't mind seeing her come in. That'd be great. Just to add, a few veteran women's wrestlers to the lineup to kind of help. I don't know who else is out there at the moment that I would like to see in the division, but we will see at that point. So that is it for this week. I was hoping to have a co-host this week, but he could not make it. So if you are interested in possibly being a co-host, either on a regular basis or as an ad-needed basis when my co-host, somebody can't make it or something like that, shoot me an email, eric@thatswrestling.com, and we can talk and see what we can do. Also, if you would like to just shoot me a question, comments, feedback, a discussion topic for maybe a non-review show, you can shoot me that at eric@thatswrestling.com. You can also find me on Twitter, That's Wrestling1 with the number 1. If you're watching this on YouTube, it is available as a podcast on all your favorite podcast platforms, or you can go over to thatswrestling.com to pick up the RSS feed. If you are listening to this as a podcast, I do the AEW Dynamite review live on Thursday night at 8 o'clock Eastern on YouTube, so you can head over there to That's Wrestling over on YouTube, or follow the link in the show notes to the channel. So thanks for tuning in, everybody, to That's Wrestling, and I will see you again next week. See you guys.